I think the thing that I would tell you, and kind of, as you're thinking about the City of Mission, as you're thinking about the services that we offer, and it's the thing that I always challenge my employees to think, is that maybe there's services that others could be offering instead of the City of Mission. I think there was a good article about 911 this morning as it relates to...
Nailed it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did.
And I would argue that we're doing it in terms of our building inspectors with the county. We're doing it in terms of our IT. You'll see an interlocal agreement with Johnson County providing our IT. We think we're going to get a significant savings on our phones through Johnson County. That we're continuing to explore any avenues and all avenues where we can buy services from some other governmental entity that our residents already pay taxes to. A resident of the county and county government is no different than our resident, and they're already paying taxes to the county. If we can buy a service that leverages that tax dollar that Mission resident is paying, we should figure out how to do it. So we continue to look at all of those. I will tell you, we probably have more interlocal agreements with cities and counties than anybody else. Overland Park, interlocal on the transit center. We're looking at Overland Park to maybe help us with design inspection, construction inspection on road projects. They can do it for a lot less. They have a better relationship with KDOT. They have a much simpler approval process than we do. We would look at Roland Park and Fairway. The problem that we have with Roland Park and Fairway is I think they're trying to figure out how to work at sharing services, and I keep pushing them to consider the county. The county already has the back door administration, the back room administration to handle a lot of things that we already do. And instead of us trying to partner to do it, just go to a bigger entity that really has the resources. So, and I'll start with Lawrence because he's to my left. As you think about the City of Mission, Lawrence, and as you think about the services that we provide, and knowing that we have a survey out there, I mean, what's the stuff that's most important?
In terms of our city budget?
Right.
Well, I mean, the most important, I mean, to me, that's a fairly straightforward answer. You start with public safety and you work your way down. And then you start with public works, which is maintaining your infrastructure that you're investing in. And you get down to parks and rec. In a city our size, we don't get much beyond those 3 Ps. Right. I mean, if you talk about Overland Park or Shawnee or Lenexa, you know, they'll do fire. They'll do some other things. But, I mean, that's really where we're at. And quite frankly, all those are important to our citizens. You know, sure, you have to prioritize, but I mean, a city our size, I don't know what else to say. You know, what's most important to me probably isn't saying, well, let's start battling internally between public safety and Parks and Rec or public works. I'm not interested initially, at least in that internal battle. What I'm interested in saying is the cost to provide some of these services, in my opinion, are out of line with the number of citizens, taxpayers, paying for them. And we need to find a way to work with others to share those costs more equitably. The numbers up here are pretty bad, and quite frankly, this whole budget's unacceptable to me. But what we lose track of is that other cities have equally bad situations. Yeah. We don't hear about that in this room. And so if you have all these little cities, specifically in the Northeast, having equally bad budget problems presented in front of them, I can't help but wonder why we're not working together more to try to solve these problems collectively. And that's where I pull the hair out of my head, is wondering where is that collective desire to work together. Because if we don't work together to provide these services, our identities are, I think, at peril. So that's where my focus is, not prioritizing the services, but working together to deliver them more cost effectively.
How about you, Dave?
Well, you know, I mean, I think we all are in agreement on, you know, what's important. As I look at the budget, you talk about the yellow piece scaring you, and recognizing that it may be 18% of revenue, but we also know that in terms of what it represents in overall expense, it's far greater.
Right.
You know, I don't want to be a city without a Parks and Rec department, but you know, if 9.5 is really the reality and it stretches out over a 5 or 6 year term, I mean, we've got to figure out a way, whether it's a public-private partnership, whether it's accelerating the conversation with Prairie Village, whether it's, saying we're not going to have an outdoor pool, doing something that allows us to manage that aspect of Parks and Rec, where it's, figuring out how to get it to break even, ought to be the goal, and figuring out, because if we get Parks and Rec to break even, the savings we realize, can you quantify that?
$800,000 a year.
Yeah, so in terms of an exercise that we go through with this budget or as part of the budget process, and I know that's wildly unpopular and people are passionate about Parks and Rec, and I started all that by saying, I don't want to be a city without Parks and Recs,
Right.
but I'd like to be a city with Parks and Recs where it's a break-even proposition. And I mean, so for me, we know what the priorities are, but unless you want less police, you want less public works, because again, it's tied to people and commodities. I mean, I don't think we have a lot of, I don't know if you can, I don't think you can save your way out of this.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can.
So it has to become a revenue conversation. Maybe Parks and Rec provides that, that opportunity.
Yeah. What you, Sue?
I agree with everything that's been said, that all the way through I kept thinking the two things that cost the most are the police department and the community center. Those are the two things, and we should be able to do more cooperation, at least with the police department, and I don't know what we could do with the community center unless the county would come in. But those are the two things that we could do that would save the most money.
I mean, the thing that I try to make sure that people understand is that Overland Park has one community center, and there are 175,000 people.
Exactly.
We have a community center, and we're 9,400 people. They can absorb it in their budget, and yeah, it's kind of a pain. But the scale at which they work is so much different than ours, that community center, while they have to, subsidize it, in the context of their bigger budget, it doesn't look any different than,
And we
probably the
never,
planning
ever
department.
put money away from the very beginning.
Right.
Well, the whole approach was wrong to begin
Yeah,
with.
it was.
I mean, there's no doubt about it.
And we were there.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Now, as a city administrator, Mike, do you meet with the other Northeast administrators and talk collectively about sharing services?
Yes, we do.
And what is the, consensus?
Well, the problem we have now is that John Carter left Roland Park, and so Pat Geschwin is the interim, and they're interviewing finalists in the next month. So they're Roland Park's without a city administrator. And Kate Gunja went on maternity leave March 24th. And so what happens is all the people that you need to be talking with, especially at this time of the year, are all not in a job. And then Westwood doesn't have one. And then the rest of the cities are sort of contract. Courtney Christensen with Mission Hills, but Mission Hills is almost all contract already. So their police is provided by Prairie Village. Their planning is pseudo Prairie Village, pseudo them. Their building inspectors might be Westwood, but they have a combination of.
No, they've got their own.
That they contract with.
Yeah.
And then who do we get our 911 services from?
Ours is through the county. So if you read the Steve Rose article today, we would be one of the 12 cities that has their 911 services handled through the county.
And are there other services that we can now piggyback on as far as sharing other services?
Yeah.
Readily?
Yeah, I mean, the county really has a really good IT department, given their location.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
And so we're already down the road. They're doing our building inspections. They're going to do our rental property inspections as well. As it relates to planning work, we've tried to talk to other cities about, we actually have a planning department that could help some of these smaller cities that don't, in terms of doing some of the initial plan review, updating their comprehensive plan, all those types of things. We already share animal control amongst all the cities. We're in a shared fire service district. So if you wanted to see a model of a lot of sharing of services, the rest of the United States is trying to catch up to where we are right now. And my argument is we have to go a lot further than we are right
We
now.
do.
And I would argue that the whole 911 discussion, while interesting, I would argue isn't big enough. I would argue that you should have 5 call centers in Kansas, and that you don't need as many as we have. And that given GIS and given that how radio communications work, you can easily dispatch. Because remember, all you're doing is transferring information that you pick up on the phone call to an officer or a fire person in a community. And where that call comes in at, it really doesn't matter. It's your ability to translate the information into usable information. And I would argue that there are other models outside of the United States that have proven to be wildly successful in how they work. We have too many counties in Kansas. We have too many governmental entities in Kansas. Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of consolidation and coordination that we could be doing. As I saw all the police chiefs' comments, I think I understood sort of where they were at. I mean, I think there's another story to the story today. But at the same, because I would argue, as much as I agree with Sheriff Denning as relates to 911, I would ask Sheriff Denning, why is it that we need to have sheriffs work as jailers who when you could you could do it for 1/3 the cost if they weren't dutied sheriffs? Because everybody else in the United States has correctional officers that aren't sworn officers, but we don't. And so the question is there other savings that could be, gleaned? And there is. I mean, I look at what the city of Mission's billed for jail services were in the first quarter, and the number's $15,000. We pay $60,000 to $75,000 a year to house people at the jail. And one of the problems that I would argue that we have, and it's a rethinking of everything, there's only one jail that keeps building capacity, and it's the Johnson County Jail. And if Wyandotte County chooses not to expand the size of their jail, and if Jackson County doesn't choose to expand the size of their jail,
we
then
just get all the criminals, right?
well, yeah, go look at how many people that are in the Johnson County Jail are from Johnson County. And when you find out that it's not even half, then the question is, are we simply creating the capacity so that the other counties and cities don't have to have the capacity? And I mean, that's a real regional discussion. Mm-hmm. And then sentencing guidelines. I mean, we'll put anybody in jail almost.
Well, if 65% of our budget, has to do with personnel, is there any kind of conversation with sharing, personnel with, like some of our gurus like Martin with some of the other Northeast cities?
Oh yeah, we've talked about almost every one of our employees, for the most part, has skills that would really benefit other communities. And for the most part, we try to help them whenever we can. But internally what we've done, and it has been true for the last 4 or 5 years, Leslie's probably the best example. If we have a person that we can train to do other things, we tend to train them how to do other things. And then Leslie's probably the best example where if I had a real tough code issue that Angel and Josh were dealing with, I can pull Leslie back out of Public Works, and she probably is familiar with it. She knows the state laws, and she could deal with it. The same is true with Martin in terms of Public Works. I long ago told Martin, you need to figure out how to get easements and right-of-way. It's an important negotiating skill to learn. And he did most of the easement, a majority of the easement negotiation, right-of-way acquisition on Null. And so I'm using what was once a planner who became Director of Community Development Neighborhood Services. You're going to learn a little bit about Public Works. And so almost everybody that we have can do and run multiple departments. That is one of the reasons that we will continue to probably be cherry-picked over the next 3 or 5 years. If you've worked here, you more than likely have worked on a fairly complex project. It was probably controversial, and you were likely working in 2 or 3 different departments at the same time. And if you can do those things, guess what happens? People like Lenexa come and say, you become our Assistant City Administrator. That's what happens. And it's okay, as long as we understand it. We will always have younger employees, and we will always expect them to be able to do several different things.
And, I think that's great. We have,
Yeah.
we have bright, stellar employees, and, I think we need to be more global. I think we need to think out of just our little isolated city. I think we need to think, more county, more regional.
Yeah.
And when I talk to people at the NLC level, they think, oh my gosh, you have Martin Riverola in your city? And, I say, yes, we're very proud to have him.
We have it today.
Yeah,
We're going to
there's-
have him tomorrow, or maybe not tonight.
So Will, you've done a tour of duty before, and you're back for another tour of duty, and there was a city council you were with and a mayor you were with. It's different than the city council mayor you're with today, but I have to think that some of the things that you're interested in now were the same things you were interested in 8 years ago, 9 years ago?
Yeah, streamlining. Yes, there are a fair number of employees today than there were when I was on the council 10 years ago. But a lot of that has to do with some changes that have happened in the community. We've got, Facebook and all this other stuff. But I think there are some savings that can be produced, and even starting this year, I've got some ideas. When's our next meeting?
Finance mail-up.
2 weeks.
It might be too late. One of the biggest deficits that this city has had for the past 20 years, and this is going to be a real unpopular idea, is closing that pool.
No, it's
I
been
agree.
taken,
That-
I agree too.
Pool has,
Siphoned off.
every year at the beginning of each season, it's always like, well, here's another $50,000 repair that we have to do.
It's a lot of money and cross your
And
fingers.
it's a lot of Band-Aiding instead of fixing it completely.
And it has been mentioned to me that we do not have nearly as many patrons at the outdoor pool as we have in the past.
That is correct. Without our summer program, the pool would have about 1/3 the attendance that it does, or Our summer program generates the attendance.
Summer program coming out of the community center.
Right.
Be clear for those that aren't familiar with
Well,
Yeah.
we also have,
And just to be clear, there would be other alternatives.
Absolutely.
Yes.
We wouldn't lose that revenue, which is a great
Correct.
moneymaker for Parks and Rec.
Correct.
Yes.
And Will, that is consistent with what I said earlier about
Mhm.
Parks and Rec, and so from my standpoint, that's 50 of the 800, you know what I mean? And look, Parks and Rec, I think, of the elephants in the room, is the one that is going to have to be, throughout, I don't mean to take your time, but through this budget and the next budget, we're going to have to continue to figure out how to either lessen the subsidy or figure out what the new goal is, if 9.5 in particular is the reality.